Oh my goodness, it's that time of year again. It's time to react to reviews of my album. This is, I guess, becoming a little bit of a tradition now. I did it with my last release back in November, and that was just a lovely experience, and it was amazing getting to, like, read community feedback and hear people's thoughts and for people to be engaging with my art, and it was cathartic for me, and I hope that, maybe it was a little bit fun for other people as well. So we're back with part 2, to Cast Pearls Before Swine Edition, my new album. And before I go on, I just want to say thank you everyone who left a review. Thank you everyone who listened to the album. Like, just listening means a fucking world to me. I don't even know how to express how much that means to me. And to the people who have left reviews here, thank you for not only engaging with my art in that way, but taking the time to, like, formulate your thoughts and write a, like, constructed review about my art. Like, I'm honored. every person who wrote a review, thank you. It means so much. You are all amazing. But without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, we'll tackle the elephant in the room, the big ol' scary Brad 31. Please don't be mean to Brad, or some people in the Discord server were being a little salty about this, but it's perfectly valid. Brad is completely okay in his take here. He says that everything I enjoyed about the previous Mini Tiny Boxes album has been altered to an unrecognizable state onto Cast Pearls Before Swine. I thought I was going insane at first, so I revisited the previous album, and I think it grew on me in doing so after hearing this album. Whereas the previous album was a loose paranoid experiment, To Cast Pearls Before Swine feels like it dresses to impress. It genuinely feels like the only motivation is to shock the listener. There no longer feels like that genuinely horrifying backbone that made the music work so well. I found myself constantly cringing at the writing of this album, feeling it was trying way hard at every single turn. The previous album had a genuine sense of unnerve. It felt like it wasn't afraid to jump out of the page. This album is more scared of being perceived negatively over anything. I am glad that many people are loving this, but I barely enjoyed any of this. I feel like this is what I feared would happen after talking so highly of the previous album has manifested. The music feels less authentic, it's different but subtle, just enough to make it feel like nothing here worked. It's a little sad that Brad doesn't like it, but it is perfectly okay, and I understand where he's coming from, and his experience with the album feeling that way is completely valid. I'm sad that that is the experience that was given. I really try to put my everything into my art, so I would, I'm sad that that is the experience that Brad had, but it's not in any way invalid, and I can see kind of where he's coming with this. I do think this is a much less writing focused album. I think it's very focused on sound design and these instrumentals. I've been insanely into sound design. It's been like my favorite thing in the world to just experiment with silly sounds and try and create these weird compositions using them and conveying my experiences and emotions through these weird textures and synths and stuff that I build from the ground up. Feels very freeing and cathartic for me. But Brad didn't enjoy it, and that's okay. Don't be mean. Don't be stupid. Brad's valid. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening, Brad. I'm sad that you didn't enjoy it, but I appreciate you taking the time nonetheless. Okay, next we have Static's review, which is a 95. They say, holy moly, I didn't know how Many Tiny Boxes was going to be able to top last year's record, but she absolutely fucking knocked this one out of the goddamn park. To Cast Pearls Before Swine is essentially an immense, manic, and emotional as fuck breakdown, even more than the last album. The pure, unbridled chaos that this album ensues is something that keeps you on your toes for the entire 38-minute runtime. It felt like my ears were being torn apart by someone absolutely losing their mind, and I'm just trapped in the same room with them, not really able to interact with them or comfort them, but only able to observe. This was absolutely suffocating album through and through, and I absolutely loved it. Shit goes hard. Best tracks all, worst tracks none. Thank you so fucking much, Hidden and Static. Very kind words. It means a lot to hear that being said, because a lot of what I want to convey through music is the ugliness of, like, in the first album, the ugliness and horribleness of, like, trauma and abuse. And in this one, it's kind of more so the ugliness of like reclaiming autonomy, like the ugliness of healing, the slow, gross, disgusting process of healing. And through this review, I'm like, yes, it's getting there. I feel it. Thank you so much, Hidden and Static. It means the fucking world. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, here we have a review from Insane Sheep 98. Let's fucking go, 98. Okay. When it comes to albums like this, I do have to show a special protocol when rating them. I can't say, did I enjoy that? I would have to say, would I change anything about that? The answer is no. This is possibly my album of the year. Thank you so much. It's the best experimental project I've heard this year. Let's talk about it. It's hard for me to articulate what this means. Controlled chaos are the two words that immediately come to mind. The album is beautiful in a dark, twisted, distorted sort of way, and that's exactly the vibe Many Tiny Boxes was going for. It improves upon our self-titled in almost every way. The individual songs sound disconnected from reality, like it's what you would hear if a god was transporting you to another dimension. As someone who is here for the Fuck to Death music video premiere, I recommend you watch that video. It does an excellent job at visualizing the incredible mindfuck of this LP. In a World Without Air is a great closer. It has the cleanest, quietest vocals on the album and fades out peacefully. It made me feel at peace with the previous chaos, like it was just something I had to accept. She did an incredible job with the harsh, almost uncomfortable mixing. The pacing was like a roller coaster that gave you just enough time to breathe before sucking you in for another 10 loops. Any experimental label would be proud to be producing something like this, and any critic would love the artistic expression shown by such a simple idea. Great job to Aspen and all our friends involved in the music, the videos, and any other sort of support. I encourage everyone to join the Discord server. It's awesome. Many Tiny Boxes is a treasure. This is very sweet. Thank you so much. Many Tiny Boxes is a treasure to experimental music, and we need to encourage music like this. Everyone help makes it like Fantana see this. Favorite Fucks of Death, Wolf and Woman, Love Again No Longer. Thank you, Insane Sheep. This is one of the sweetest things I've ever heard. I feel like you truly got the full experience that I could have hoped and intended for someone to get, and I appreciate your support. I appreciate the kind words. It is so validating and so kind and so amazing to hear. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I tried very hard, and I feel like a lot of the compliments that you said cut very deep for me. I appreciate it. Okay, this one is a short one from Fritz TD. For an album with so much going on in the songs, I just found it boring. Fair enough. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it, Fritz TD. Okay, we have Annie with a 96. Honestly, an insane record. Maybe even more than last year's self-titled release. My favorite thing about it is that it's able to stay enjoyable, not just enjoyable, it's an absolute banger, while being this chaotic and conveying a message where words would have no chance to succeed. The song Object is a really good example of that. While being instrumental, it pretty much screams its message into your face until you feel like a broken pencil tossed into a corner in a good way. Some songs actually got me getting goosebumps. For example, To Forgive Life, Mother Not Even a Face Could Love, and Love Again. And the whole experiment ends perfectly with the fade out in a world without air. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Annie. This makes me so happy to hear. I'm so glad that this project holds value to you and that it does this for you. I'm so happy that it's able to be bangers for you. And I really appreciate you saying, like, the kind things about, like, Object. I really tried to convey the message even without lyrics in that one. It's one that I really believe in, one that I'm very passionate about, and it makes me so happy that it was able to be received, regardless of lyrics. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words and nice review. Okay, next up, much more negative one. 41. That's a little sad. They really liked my last album, but they said on this one, whatever joy and intrigue from the last album is lost here. This is just noise at points to make noise. And obviously, I'm sad you didn't enjoy it, but I appreciate you taking the time nonetheless. And I mean, to be, honest here, a lot of it is very sound design based, very trying to create interesting noise in these like soundscapes to kind of take you into a different world, whatever. I don't know. I don't mean to be pretentious here, but there was certainly much more a focus on the sound design and the noise and trying to create this environment. And I can very much see how it can feel like just noise that points to make noise. And I appreciate you regardless, and I appreciate the feedback. Thank you very much for listening, Kinetic Socks. It is appreciated. And also thank you for listening to the last album and liking it. That means a lot too. Thank you. Okie doke. We got another long one from Jackson. Thank you so much for taking the time to review this, and I'm happy with a 90. Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Mini tiny metal pipe falling sound effect. If Mini Tiny Box's debut self-album was akin to a depiction of depression, anxiety-ridden mental breakdown, I'd like to imagine that To Cast Pearls Before Swine could be akin to an off-the-rails manic episode. Firstly, I'd like to say after having experienced this project in full, I can say with confidence that Mini Tiny Boxes has improved on all fronts from their self-titled. Their production, which was already spectacular, has been stepped up a notch and feels more focused and attention-grabbing. Their vocals, something that felt very hit or miss on the last project, fit into the vision of the project much more seamlessly and enjoyably than I gathered from the last project as well. This is, of course, without stating the fact that this album seems much more focused on its sonics, themes, and compositions than its predecessor, as the project has a good amount less vocals than the last project contained. Regardless, where there are vocal performances in this album, they mesh and blend with the sound in such a way that adds to the soundscape and world of the tracks rather than detracting from them, which is amazing. I'm super glad to see it happen. Thank you. As for the sound itself, I was already into Mini Tiny Box's production when I recently listened to their self-titled album. I thought that the chaotic and overblown messes were such great tools that could be used to invoke some insanely potent emotions and reactions. But while a lot of Mini Tiny Box's production style from the last project carries over here, I have to say that I'm incredibly intrigued and engaged by the super heavy, dark, industrial sound that is being sought after here. I think this kind of focused, explosive sound was something that was missing from a consistency standpoint on the last project. But here it shines in a perfect amount of structured chaos and wild ideas all mixed together into some insane bangers and some very unsettling moments. Most tracks feel like they have their own identity while still adhering to a sort of crazy structure, which makes for a smooth, though the sound is anything but, listen all the way through. I mentioned earlier that Pearls Before Swine seems to be comparable to a manic episode, and in that sense I feel this from the way the music presents itself in its instrumentals. While I think it's a little heady for me to make sense of these sort of comparisons, depressive and manic episodes are in some ways like two sides of the same coin. There's a lot of overlap in their display to each other, and yet in other ways are complete opposite. The reason I made this comparison about Mini Tiny Box's projects is that this feels very similarly, I can't read, I'm sorry guys, in the fact that these two projects down to their cover arts feel like two sides of the same story, while bleeding mannerisms and choices into each other at the same time. There's so much unbridled and uncontrollable energy in this project, it feels out of control but in a staggeringly explosive and strangely upbeat way. Yet still, there are these random moments, tracks, or interleads that can suddenly drop this kind of crazed episode and fall into this completely unsettling tense pit out of nowhere, which feels like a sort of callback, or perhaps just fragments of the previous project's intent, or feeling bleeding into this one. While this may or may not be something Mini Tiny Boxes has considered or even meant with this project, I legitimately get this kind of feeling between the two projects, which is such an interesting display of artistic expression and progression between projects. In every way that could have been done, in my opinion, Pearls Before Swine improves on its predecessor Mass in such a visceral and immersive manner. Well fucking done, Mini Tiny Boxes. This shit rocks. Thank you. Okay, that's this review. Thank you so fucking much. I feel like I'm so happy you got something from this. I'm so happy that I feel the vision is being heard and understood by some people. I'm happy that the sonic qualities are being appreciated that I put effort into. It means a lot. Thank you so much, Jackson, for writing this review, and it feels very good, and thank you. Taking the time to write this was so kind. Thank you so much, Jackson. Amazing. Okay, we have a review from Silly with a 65. They say, unfortunately, as much as I do enjoy most of the production here, the debut album I consider to be superior. Fair. In the single releases, while I did enjoy them for the most part, I was a bit concerned that the album wasn't going to be as interesting or emotionally investable as the first. And while I do find this album to be interesting, I found myself correct where I don't find this to be as emotionally strong as the debut album. I feel that this album is just unnerving and creepy for the sake of it, compared to the debut album which explored the darkest corners of Aspen. I really do believe that the album here was holding itself back and that the second album is not as expressive and sort of limits itself. I'm comparing this to the first album a lot, and it was really the main emotions driven behind the album that really gave it its own flair. This album isn't bad, it just loses itself a bit and its identity without as strong of an emotional driven behind the songs. I imagine of emotional drive behind the songs from the way I perceived it. Like I said though, I still really like this album, just not as much, and I'm still excited for other releases to come. Thank you so much, Silly Ag. I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the criticism. I like having this experience, like, I appreciate also, like, your phrasing that, you know, it didn't have that emotional drive behind it in the way you perceived it. Like, that is so valid. I thank you for giving it a listen, and thank you for listening to my other work too. I'm sad that it felt less emotionally compelling and less emotionally driven than the last record, but I still really appreciate it, and I like the feedback. Genuinely, it means a lot, and it's interesting to hear people's different takes and various opinions on it. And this felt like a really well-written, honest review. I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh boy, we have another whole thing. Oh my god, thank you so much, Spoons, for writing this all out. Okay, Spoons with a 96. This album is a mess. This album feels like what having a fucked up brain is like. Oh god. This album is a mess. This album is a perfect display of mental illness. This album is a mess, and that is what makes it all the more real. Whereas Mini Tiny Box's first album was a terrifying, abrasive, destructive experience, this album feels calmer, more controlled, yet at the same time more terrifying, unsettling. The improvement from the first album in this one is a lot. It still has everything I loved about the first one, and it feels more filled out than the last one. It feels like she knows what she was going for with this album and pulled it off spectacularly. I'm not gonna lie, some of these songs are such vibes, it's insane. The last album hit the emotional potency on full. This one not only hits emotional potency on full drive, the off-putting, terrifying sound I already love from Mini Tiny Boxes is more fleshed out, and the production. Oh my god, the production. I think that's the biggest improvement in this project compared to the last one. It feels like corrupted club bangers. That's the best way I can describe this music. Corrupted club bangers with mental illness hitting on all fronts. Oh my god, thank you so much. That's the vibe. That's the vibe. Thank you. Thank you. That is so kind. Anyways, in the last one, I was just shocked. In this one, I'm shocked at what's being said. I'm shocked at the instrumental, but also vibing so hard to the instrumental, like, this is fucking vibey. I love these lyrics too. Once again, I'm relating way too hard to this music, which I think makes it hit harder, / makes me rate it higher. If anything, I actually see myself more in these lyrics than the self-titled album. However, this album has songs with this album also has songs with no lyrics, and those songs are just as emotionally potent, if not more. The amount of feel, the amount of emotion, the amount of panic that is displayed in these tracks, like Failure to Grant and Object, is amazing. These tracks really display one of the best parts of Mini Tiny Boxes that I don't really think was displayed to the fullest extent on the first album, the production and the instrumentals. On the pacing side of things, I don't think this album is paced as well as the debut album. It can kind of drag on. However, I can vibe throughout it, so who cares if it feels longer than if it's vibey and ouchy. Okay, song spotlight, Object. Object is terrifying. Object is exactly what it feels like to be an object. Object feels like a PTSD flashback. Like, this is exactly what my PTSD flashbacks are like. There's no lyrics, but that makes it more emotional, I feel like. It's a fucking mess, but because of that, it feels so fucking real. So fucking real. Anyways, if you're in the mood for vibey mental illness, listen to this album. It is the vibest mental illness. Thank you so much. And thank you for highlighting Object. Object is a very very important track to me, maybe the most important track on this record. It's all about autonomy and trying to regain a sense of power and control over my body. And the fact that this message and this vibe is being able to be given to other people is beyond me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much, thank you so much. Oh, I feel like I feel so seen. Thank you so much, Spoons. I appreciate it. I appreciate you so much. Uh-oh, another low one. That's okay. Again, be nice to people. This is from Orange Doranges. Orange to Oranges. Orange to Oranges? I don't know. I don't know, guys. Album of the Year isn't just a great platform for discussing and reviewing music, but can also be used to promote reviewers' music or obscure albums too niche to fit anywhere else. That's what makes it so great. It gives artists and people a voice to make whatever they want to make, and have people care enough to write a review discussing how they feel about it. True. Very apt. To describe To Cast Pearls Before Swine as very odd and niche would be a criminal understatement. It's definitely a wonky listen, intentionally or not. It's full of quirks and is overall very experimental. I can't say I've heard an album like this, though to be fair, is there even another album to compare it to apart from their debut? I went in with the expectations mainly from the cover and the genre tags. This was going to be strange. I might absolutely despise this, but why not try? Plus it gives me an excuse to check off one of my imaginary boxes of genres to check out. That was my mindset going into this, but this just might be a bit too weird for me. A lot of these songs give up on structure, instead evolving into what sound like panic attacks with scattered drums and pulsating instrumentation. But it's definitely an album I can relate to definitely an album I cannot relate to strongly at all. The vocals can almost feel like a parody sometimes, like it's intentionally trying to sound a bit disheveled, a bit maniac and frantic. They can also get grinding really quickly. The gimmick of sounding disheveled, a bit broken and frantic can work on some songs, but generally it doesn't really work for me. The album production-wise sounds very odd as well. It's an odd album, but I can't say I like it either. Sometimes a melody or catchy pattern emerges from the chaotic mess to stand out, but it usually gets dashed away when the song decides to be something different instead. It's also scattershot, and it definitely lacks a focus that ties it down and makes me think, I get the overall artistic vision, I get what they were trying to do, which is a shame. A lot of people would eat this up, but it's just not for me, which sucks. I really wanted to like this, as it's clear the artist has put a ton of work into making this, but it doesn't really connect together for me. Some parts of some songs sound really good, but the focus gets lost and it vanishes away into the strange, noisy abyss. I just can't get into the ideas here. I still recommend giving it a listen because supporting small artists is a cool thing indeed. Favorite songs, There Is a Place for You Here, Failure to Grant, Love Again. Worst songs, pretty much every song not in the favorites, though I will note that In a World Without Air was genuinely awful. 30 out of 10, just not my taste. It's well made, experimental as hell, but it didn't work for me as a cohesive or enjoyable listening experience. When there were genuinely great ideas on the album, they felt short-lived and replaced with inferior ideas. The ideas are there, and when they work they are good, but nothing clicked with me, and the abrasive sound in this album really grinded on me after a while, even the sweet Love Again breaking it up. That is... Okay, thank you so much for listening. This is an amazing review. I appreciate how, kind and respectful they were the entire duration of the review to me. Despite not enjoying it. That is appreciated. Thank you. It means a lot, and I am very happy that you gave it a shot. I genuinely appreciate the constructive criticism. The feedback on what people are getting from the album is valuable to me as the person who makes it, even though I'm trying mostly just to stay true to myself. I appreciate that it's you're being honest and showing that it's hard to follow and the cohesion is not there. Even if that is kind of the point, it means a lot that you took the time to write this, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Oranges, Doranges, Oranges. Thank you very much. Okie doke. We got a review from Enme. Enme I think was in the first video and has since been a member of our community ever since that album dropped. So amazing to still see Enme here, and every time Enme's around, it makes me so happy. Anywho, they say, If Many Tiny Box's previous album was flailing in panic and helplessness, this is her using that energy to be in control, to regain autonomy. Even the production feels far more calculated, unlike the self-titled release that sounded like it was falling apart as you listened. Although this album is not without the classic Many Tiny Box's sound, there are tracks like the genuinely haunting Fuck to Death, which viscerally recounts moments of trauma, and There Is a Place for You Here, which at times feels like it could have come straight out of the last record. Don't get me wrong though, this is not at all a bad thing. I love the new range that is attempted here. This project has more of a focus on production, which is fantastic because Many Tiny Boxes is a mastermind of this style of music. That is so sweet. Okay. It's a very fitting follow-up in her discography. Does it stand on its own, though? This is the part of the review where Enme overthinks everything. I'm still unfamiliar with this project, and I can see it growing on me with time, but these are just my first impressions. I'll give it another listen, see if the times come to mind, see if my thoughts change. But for now, unfortunately, the overall structure of this record is something I don't completely agree with. Despite the incredible sounds it has, as a whole, it's missing the compelling stories I found in her other works. And because of that, it's difficult to feel like the abrasiveness within the album is completely justified. I also think that the back and forth between the loud, harsh-sounding tracks and the gentler pieces feel pretty unnatural. I absolutely loved the song Fuck to Death as a single, but when placed at track 2, it feels awkward as an introduction, and ends up partially losing that incredible atmosphere as built as a standalone piece. I also feel as though Many Tiny Boxes has far more potential in her writing. The lyrics that are on this album are all fantastic, but there is so little of them that it leaves a significant empty space for me. My overall point is that it's unlikely I would have connected with the project if not for Many Tiny Box's previous work. The self-titled record adds a lot more context that this one just doesn't have. Although I'll mention too that these issues are just set up to what I personally like. There's honestly nothing bad about this album, and I really hope that there are people who find it that love all the choices it makes. I'd also like to mention that some moments are executed unbelievably well. Mother Not Even a Face Could Love is pure fucking catharsis. It makes me want to break my skull in half by banging my head against a wall, in a good way. I was worried when I heard that Object would be the opening track, but the placement it is in now works perfectly. No Longer is also my favorite song that wasn't a single. It's like the final burst of energy on the record, and it's so powerful when considering the subject matter of the lyrics. I'm going to be honest, I'm so tired right now and this review is probably unreadable, but I've spent way too long in it not to post. So TLDR, this album is fucking cool. Many Tiny Boxes sounding better than ever. Stop reading my shitty writing and go listen to it, even if you've heard it already. Go listen to it, I don't care. Many Tiny Boxes herself! Oh shit, I'm being called out. I know you've had to read this shit. Go re-listen to your own album. It's really great and it makes me happy to see you proud of it. That is so sweet. Favorite track, Mother Not Even a Face Could Love. Thank you, Enme. Thank you. This is so kind. It actually melts me into pieces. The last little bit's very sweet. And thank you so much for the compliments. Thank you so much for the shoutouts on the production and highlighting some of your moments. And thank you for the feedback. The lack of lyrics I totally understand, and there are them. And I kind of chose a very different approach to when I was writing them. And the pacing, kind of what I planned. I kind of had a rough feel of the direction I wanted it to go and the ups and downs of it. I do think, I 100% see where you're coming from on that, and I appreciate the listen so much. I appreciate the listen. I appreciate the feedback, and it means the world. It means the world. Thank you, Enme. I'm so happy you're a part of this community. You're amazing. Thank you for taking the time to write this whole thing out. And it's not unreadable at all. It's wonderfully written. You did an amazing job. Thank you so much for taking the time to engage with my art and me. Woo! Okay, now this is a review that I've read before, and I really, really liked it. It resonated with me and made me very happy. So I decided this would be a lovely one to close on. Got a 95, and they said, "Wow, I'm saddened by this one, not for the expected reasons, I think. Multiple of the best instrumentals I've ever heard in my life, yet lacking the vocals that entirely made the debut album for me. Despite that, this release is boundary pushing on all fronts. The way these songs are written seems to weave a delicate balance. It is finding control and self in the midst of instability, uncertainty, fear, and agony, which I feel like is just perfectly executed on my favorite track, Love Again." Thank you. That is so beautiful. So beautiful. This album retains my favorite part of the last album, the uncompromising nature of it. Fuck whatever you think a song has to sound like, represent, or be. This album will do things that seem strange, unpleasant, or even unnecessary. It really speaks to music and songwriting as an art form, as something more than media just to be consumed. In that regards, the vocals I wanted to hear don't matter. To cast pearls before swine is stubborn and unchanging. It exists for itself and its creator. The world tries to murder the sparkle in our eyes, and this is what happens if you refuse to let it. I love this review. Obviously it's a positive one, so you know, take it with a grain of thought, with a grain of salt, a grain of salt. But I love it. It's so sweet. Thank you. It's so sweet, and I feel like it really, 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 really gets at what I'm going for here. It touches on the sense of trying to regain control, trying to navigate these chaotic situations and reclaim your power and have self and worth and value in it. It also touches on like its uncompromising nature, which I feel like a lot of people have been kind of reading into this thinking that I've been trying to please people, but this has really kind of just been following where my heart goes a little bit. I'm trying to do these chaotic productions. I'm trying to create these weird sounds and fucky atmospheres, and like it's cathartic. It's beautiful to me. It's something I'm proud of, something that I put a lot of work into, and I just appreciate it. And the last quote, the world tries to murder the sparkle in our eyes, and this is what happens when you refuse to let it, is so beautiful. Like I don't think I could have come up with that. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's thank you. That is the sweetest thing in the whole world that I've ever heard. It genuinely makes me emotional. That is beautiful. Thank you so fucking much. That made me so happy you don't even know. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That alone makes everything worth it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, well, I think that will conclude the reaction time now for this video. Thank you so fucking much for listening to the record. Thank you so much for being an amazing community. Thank you so much for sitting through the video. Thank you for listening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. I'm blown away that people care. Thank you for caring. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for being here. You are so valuable. You are so worthwhile. You are so loved. You are so cared for. Please value yourself. You are amazing. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Aspen says bye-bye.